Open the meeting. We'll do a roll call. District 1, District 2,
Here.
District 3, District 4.
Here.
District 5, here. Superintendent's statement that Ms. France, I guess, will be delivering for us.
Rick is sorry he can't be here today, but the statement is as follows. In accordance with section 200.065 and chapters 1010 and 1011 Florida statutes, we are submitting the tentative balanced budget for the 2018-2019 and recommending the millage to be levied. On July 24th, 2018, you approved the tentative budget and millage for advertising. The purpose of today's public hearing is to approve the 2018-2019 proposed tentative budget and proposed millage rate, and to set the date, time, and place of the final public hearing on our budget.
All right. Okay, we'll start with the public hearing part of the agenda about the 2018-2019 tentative budget, and we'll have an explanation of the rollback rate. It always puts my head in the spin because
And I've got plenty more here, but I think all of you have one.
I don't. Oh, is that what all this is?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, as Ms. France mentioned, we're here today to present, discuss, and adopt the tentative millage rates and the tentative budgets for the 2018-19 school year. And you've each been given a package of handouts that we'll go briefly through. The first thing that I'm required by law to discuss in order to be in compliance with Florida Truth and Millage guidelines is the rollback rate. And the rollback rate is the millage rate that it would take to bring into the district the same amount of tax revenue as we received last year. It's applied to the current year tax base and does not include the effects of new construction. You'll see you have a rollback rate handout. It's your first handout. And you'll see from that handout that the rollback rate is 6.0167 mils. And our proposed millage of 6.155 mils will bring in 102.30% of the tax revenues that we received last year. Our proposed millage rate is 2.30% more than the rollback rate.
Rhonda, can you put the microphone just a little closer to your mouth?
Yes, sir, I'll be happy to. On page 2 of the millage handout, you will note, however, that our millage rate is decreasing by 0.199 mils from the 6.354 mils that we levied last year to 6.155 mils this year. And that decrease is attributable to the decrease in our required local effort. And as you all know, that millage amount is set by the Florida legislature, and we are required to set that rate in order for us to participate in the state allocation of FEFP funds. So we really had no say on that amount. If you'll look on page 3 of the handout, you'll see that if let's just choose one of them. If a person has $125,000 appraised value of his home with the taxable value being $100,000 after the $25,000 exemption, they would see a $19.90 decrease in their taxes. So I want to be sure, you know, that all that's on the record, that
Small price to pay.
the only way that a person would see an increase in their taxes is if the amount of their property value went up, because even though we had to advertise as an increase, a property tax increase, we are actually lowering the millage. I'm just giving you several handouts for informational purposes. The next one is a comparison of property tax values, millage, and revenue. And I wanted to show you an analysis from 2009-10 up to current time. And even though we are on the rise, we are still, our property tax base is still 4.2 billion. It was 4.2 billion in 2009-10, and it's 4.06 billion now.
Good grief.
So that's still $141 million less than we were valued at 9-10. Our millage rate at the same time has declined by 1.658 mils. And so overall, those two combined has caused our decline in property tax revenue of over $7 million from what we were getting in 2009-10. We still have not regain back to
That
where
was-
we were at
that
one
was
point in
the-
time.
That was the big crash, yeah.
Yes, sir, that was.
In 2009.
2008, 2009. yeah.
2008-9, yes, ma'am. And your next handout is an analysis of our collection of property taxes. We're required by statute to budget or by trim, to budget a 96% collection rate, and we always budget that. And every year since I had been in the position, we have always collected over that 96% rate because we get that, at the end of the year, they do the, where they sell the tax certificates, and so the money would come on in. If you recall, we had had a scare last year because it was the first year where we did not collect what we had budgeted, and we were over $209,000 down because we only received 94.9% instead of 96%. I'm happy to say that that did not develop into a trend, and we actually, this year, collected well over the 96% collection rate that I had budgeted. We collected
sure did.
98.55%, and we had a really, really good tax certificate sale. A good sum of money came in with that last distribution that we got mid-July that posts back to the prior fiscal year. So you'll see we collected over $470,000 more than we had budgeted to receive.
Does
So-
that go to the tax collector and then we get a check from the tax collector?
Yes.
Okay.
They deposit it into our accounts, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And we get 12 distributions throughout the year, and the big ones are always, of course, in November, December, January, like that, and then, of course, we get another big one at the tax certificate sale. I want to talk briefly about capital dollars, because I did have to answer public records request this week, and they asked questions about capital, and he said he was going to be here, but I promised him a copy of these handouts. But let me get to that one. This is the decline, way back in 2007 and 8, and it had been that way for many, many years. We were at 2 mills. Then it went down to 1.75 mills, and now it's at 1.5, and that's all we can levy for capital purposes. And in the current budget year, the tax base went up, so we are, of course, projecting it more capital millage dollars than we got last year, but we're still $2 million less than we received in capital dollars in 2007-8. So not just the general fund is affected, but capital is also. We're collecting PICO special maintenance funds, and they did the 10-year projection, and this year is still the exact same amount we got last year, $333,000, but it's still, PICO's still $1.2 million less than it was in 7 and 8. So
Now, and-
overall, we've seen a decline of $3.8 million in millage for capital purposes
Built
over
out.
that period of time.
Since David stepped down as superintendent.
Ma'am? What'd I do?
Since you
when
stepped
the
down as
decline
superintendent,
started.
it was up until you stepped down. It was up to 2.
That's
Yeah,
It was
but
at 2, and then after that, pfft,
Well, it was a bad time.
I
Nobody-
know,
it-
I
it-
know,
yeah.
I'm teasing you.
That
don't
just so
envy-
happened
I
to
don't
be the
envy
year that
Tom
I
Townsend
stepped
Walking
into,
into that.
yeah, this happened to be the year that I stepped into this position too,
Role,
when
yeah.
Tony left, and it was really a nightmare that we had to face because we were fixing to have year 3 of a
That was-
3-year
remember.
contract, and we had to pull back
it
from
was
it. So it was
terrible.
not a fun time. It was not. The next handout you have. We did. We survived, and we're moving ahead. Your next handout, you've seen it before, and it was in the newspaper. It's the notice of tax for school capital outlay. We're required, of course, to advertise how we plan to spend the 1.5 mils. Just because it's on there, we do not necessarily have to do every one of those categories, but if it's not listed, then we cannot spend in any particular way without having another re-advertising in the paper and having another public hearing. So we try to put everything in there that we think we're going to do for the year.
And in all fairness, on PICO, we're pretty much built out in our schools, We do have
Yeah.
bathrooms and things like that you have to
Right.
remodel. And that's,
It can be used for repair,
people
right?
don't really
the
understand
special maintenance piece.
exactly how the money works.
Yeah, but there's a lot of districts, though, that still have those needs, and they're not getting it either, so.
But we didn't mention legislative appropriations don't show up in this, do they?
Let's see.
Where we've picked up over the years.
Yeah, we've got the Votech Palatka campus, over on the far right, the 600,000 and the 1.1 million. I don't think, I haven't got the paperwork yet on this year, so it's not on there yet. When I get that, I'll update
I was
my,
just
Do we
curious.
have a figure on that?
It would be, when you go back to what we did a few years ago with Middleton Bernie,
The new wing,
the new wing, $1 million there, and a few other things, it's gonna be a substantial amount of money, millions of dollars, yeah.
that's good. Well, I've got, you know, the two First Coast amounts on there, and I know we're getting an amount this year, but I'll put it on when we do receive it.
Okay.
And it'll probably be updated by our final budget hearing.
There'll be a better session this year for St. John's River State College and the school district, I'm sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
God, it's been pitiful.
And then I wanted to give you a breakdown of how we plan to spend that capital millage. The 1.5 mil will bring in 5.8 million, and after we fund our maintenance department, and we fund everything in it except the auditors say there's a few things that are not allowed by statute, and that would be if there's any custodians in there, they have to be pulled out and paid out of the regular general fund, pest control, tree trimming limbs, things like that. So that's not within the 3.3 million. They have another budget within the regular general fund that we pay that from. We still give the schools the $400,000, and that is split out based on a formula that addresses the square footage of each school site and the age of the building, puts a factor in also.
I've always favored that as a principle. I favored having the money and being able to do with it as I felt like we needed, but I gotta tell you, I hear more people complain, they can't understand why this isn't done and that isn't done, and they don't understand that the principal and the staff assess the needs they have at their school, and they've got money to fix it,
Right.
and they think the board ought to be just
While-
arbitrarily doing stuff.
While we're talking about the money going to the schools, I know this is capital outlay. Is it the same with like 511 money? How is what each school gets determined as far as how much 511 they get?
Okay, we do not determine their 511. What we do determine is the overall amount they're going to get other than salary and benefits, and it's based on their FTE. And like the higher grade levels, it's maybe $125. I'm pulling this out of the air, but I think it's pretty close. $125 per student. You know, the lowest it is $100 per student. But we give the lump sum to the schools and tell them to budget how they see fit. And we've used site-based management since way before my time, and they've determined the principal.
I know, because when I first started teaching, we got a good chunk of change, you know, to use in our classrooms. And then it just got less and less
Yes.
every year. And
I guess it would be down to the principal or, you know, the administrative staff at the school determining how to
I mean, I
split
was
that
buying
money
sets of
out.
books and-
That was back when Bob Graham was probably governor.
No, when Bob Graham was governor, things were great.
That's what I mean, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So after everything that we budgeted, there's $667,000 left over, and John in the maintenance department will utilize that to take care of any needs that his own staff cannot take care of as far as remodeling and renovations go.
Do we have any projects going on right now?
Not any big projects that I'm aware of. Oh, I mean, the separate thing, that's the first loan that we did, the energy retrofit. He's got that, you know, that going on, and I think the first step of that, I wish Thomas was here, but I think the first step of that was replacing all the lighting and everything, and then he'll do the HVAC pieces of that. But if you'll recall, we got the $2.5 million for that, and John felt like that would be enough to do all that needed to be done instead of going with the FPL loan where they were proposing over an $8 million loan to do it, so.
What money in the past, before the new Senate bill as far as safety, what money was used to buy the security cameras and those sorts of things for each school, like we have at
It would
Black
be
High School?
it'd be the capital dollar, so it'd either be, an individual school might decide to do it on their own out of their $400,000 that's split between them, or they would go to John or whoever
Okay,
was
so
there
some of this
before.
could be used
Yes.
if we needed it
Yes,
to be used.
because it can only be spent on capital outlay purposes, but furniture, fixtures, equipment falls into that category, so
Okay.
security equipment could definitely fall into that.
Okay.
I still wouldn't doubt that we get an infusion of cash for that prior to the Senate race.
Well, I'm
between-
hoping we do, but if we
Between
don't,
Scott and Nelson, yeah.
yeah.
And we'll, of course, get the hardening money too, once they get through that process. The latest I've heard, it's probably will be January.
It's gonna be
when
that
they'll-
long.
Yeah. And they do say, though, if there's things that need to be done, if we can fund them another way, then we can reimburse ourselves
reimbursed.
with that money when it comes down. The next item that I have is, of course, the ad that was in the paper, and that's our budget summary ad. And it's a one-page compression of our budget by fund type, revenue source, and expenditure function. And over there in the white notebook, which we keep in your room out there, of course, I can give everybody one if you want it, but usually they just always piled up and stayed, nobody bothered it. But that's line by line, cost center by cost center, all the way down, every detail. So if you want to, please take the time to look over that, and it'll remain in your mail room until the next fiscal year. Like I said, at any time you can request, I send you a printout of any school department, any fund, or the entire budget. I can email it, or I can put it in your box. As I did before, I'm going to call attention to the two items that I did at the meeting to advertise. We do see a beginning fund balance in the general fund, in the first column there that says fund balances July 1st, 2017 of $9,751,887.44. And we're estimating our June 30th, 2019 fund balance to be $5,518,947.44. And I wanted to break down to you how I came up with those figures. So your next handout.
Where
will
was
show-
that figure you just said, the 5 million?
It'll be the next to the last item
Oh, I
there,
see
the
it.
first column. That's what I'm estimating our June
transfers and fund
30th
balance.
fund balance to be. So for the first figure, the beginning fund balance, that's after the year is closed out, all revenues have been received, and all budgets closed, all expenditures paid. That $9.7 million is broke down in reserve for project balances within State Fund 100 that are different state and local projects that have strings attached, and the money has to stay in those projects until spent out. And we've got some really old projects that have, a few dollars left, like say library and media. I've got about 5 years worth of that still open with little tiny amounts here and there,
So what's
Those are not
eventually
big,
done with
but-
that?
We eventually do chargebacks if we see a school spending money in their newer year, when we'll charge back the old one and refund the newer one. So we can't spend it any other way than how it's been set to be spent, but, there's several things like that stay open.
But it's crazy.
We have a reserve for encumbrances, and that's purchase orders out there that have not been finalized, so that's money already spoken for, and that's $245,000.
Is there a deadline for which that has to be finalized?
The
A
purchase orders? Not really. That's in Sandy's department, but especially if it's a big purchase order that involves construction, they could stay
Right, so
open a
it's not
couple of
just
years.
teachers' purchase orders?
No, it's the
district.
entire district's
Okay.
purchase order. So we, each year, some of my staff and some of Sandy's staff looks to see if there's some out there that should be closed out, even if they have a balance on them. And of course, if that happens, it just rolls back into fund balance instead of being reserved for encumbrances. So that's one of the things I always ask them to do. If there's old purchase orders out there that are no longer needed, let's finalize them so that that rolls back. And we have to do an inventory count as of June 30th every year, and it's not a cash item, but it's goods that we have to keep listed as an asset, $476,000. I've set the three line items that say 2,700. Those three combined are our entire fund balance, but I like to keep it separated out so we can sort of see where the money has come from. So I've got the carryover 3% mandated unreserved fund balance that we started 17-18 with, and that's $2.4 million. And last year, we built up an unreserved fund balance of $792,400.93. We were all very proud of that, and that is still there and available. And then we have the rollback to the pot, an unreserved cash fund balance of $3.1 million. Now, I'm going to say that's the highest I've ever seen, and in these trying times, that was really amazing. Last year, it's actually $1.2 million more than what rolled back last year.
And it
But
would not be uncommon if things change, that they could come back to the board and ask that we limit spending or, you know, or freeze some of these funds.
Who would come back to the board?
The superintendent
Oh,
and finance would recommend that.
But this is a beginning fund balance, you know, this was June 30th's fund balance, and then when we build the budget, it's going down. But I did want to say that this additional $1.2 million, and I discussed it briefly at the advertising meeting, came about because, one, I mentioned the $470,000 additional dollars over budgeted in tax receipts that we received. We received over $400,000 additional dollars in Medicaid administrative claiming and fee-for-services this year. And we received additional interest income, so that accounted to about $1 million of it, and then the other would just be that people put on a budget request and didn't spend all of their money. And as I mentioned, our proposed ending fund balance is $5,518,947.78. It's always a lot less than the beginning fund balance is every year, because basically I don't put that $2.6 million for project balances in there, and I don't put the carryover encumbrances in there. Those two combined are $3 million. And the reason I don't put them in there is that I'm assuming we'll spend out all of those carryover projects. Wouldn't know how many we're going to and not. So they're in separate projects, so there's no sense in putting a balance holding it here. And you expect all the purchase orders to be paid out. So that's one of the big reasons. Those two things right there is one of the big reasons that the fund balance is lower.
What was the second one you said, the 2.6?
The two was the reserve for project balances and the reserve for encumbrances, because the assumption is you always want to close out as many projects as possible and close out as many purchase orders as possible. So you're giving everybody another year to spend that money that's got strings attached to it. So that's the main difference right there. And I did this again, it's exact, hadn't a change been made, but Jane, you weren't here. This is my Excel version of the general fund budget. This is the way I start budgeting each year. It'll show you estimated revenues for the year, the transfers in from the capital budget for funding the maintenance department and for property insurance flexibility, our carryover reserve. So the first page is the revenue side. And it doesn't include, like in this either, I don't put in the carryover balances in state projects, the encumbrances or inventory figures. They're all strings attached, and I can't use them in balancing the budget. It does, however, list those items on the last page so that you can see that the total amount ties back to what was listed in the paper as the overall general fund budget. This printout's also going to show you the budgeted expenditures by categories, salary, benefits, categoricals, charter school payments, operational cost, school discretionary dollars, department budgets, district initiatives, and fund balance categories, as well as a breakdown of each category as a percentage of recurring revenue. And I didn't mention in that original fund balance sheet, but I did my normal reserves from the general fund. And I did the McKay Scholarship as a reserve of $375,000. It's been steadily going up every year. I did the FTE audit adjustment, and that is when they come in and they audit bus ridership and they audit teacher certifications and IEPs, things like that, and we get hit every year. And we usually know about 3 years in advance what it's going to be. I think this year it was 48,000 and something, but I went ahead and budgeted round numbers, 50,000. I did a reserve for an FTE shortfall for the first count of 300,000, because even though our FTE numbers are up slightly projected for this year, they were up slightly last year too, and when the first count come in, we were down over 100 students, and it took more than I had set aside to cover that. And I've also budgeted another $300,000 for a proration to funds available. All of these reserves, if it doesn't actually come in where they're utilized, it's money that'll roll back to the fund balance.
Excuse me. Would it be appropriate for me to bring up a suggestion at this time?
Yeah, and you know, the whole purpose of this meeting is to tentatively adopt it, but you can also make changes. You can suggest budget changes to it.
Right.
'cause-
Well, this is my concern. I don't believe we've had any kind of an insurance quote or adjustment for the Guardian program.
Okay. I don't,
And
but
I would like to see a reserve, I have no idea how much, maybe 100,000
okay.
for the insurance increase due to the Guardian program.
Okay?
Yeah, we
I have no idea how much, though. I'm just throwing out a number.
I mean, if you do that, then you're going into, the first insurance company comes along, going to charge you $100,000. That's a
Tell them
problem.
what's in your budget.
Well, I mean, I think it's already budgeted and can be done, but Kathy's, it's a good idea. That's whatever you guys want.
I'm just saying, it's not budgeted, it's in reserve. I think there's a difference.
And you could certainly pull it out of the unreserved fund balance that's currently sitting at 1.5
That's true,
million.
too.
Are you talking
And
about
set a
medical
reserve
insurance,
category.
life
I'm
insurance?
talking about liability because we
Liability,
have
okay.
guardians
Yeah,
in our
okay,
schools. We haven't gotten any kind of a quote because part of what's asked for the quote are the policy, and we haven't done any policy.
And
So we can't get a
and-
quote till we do the
And we
policy.
really don't know. The state may come through with money to pay the insurance, but I'll laugh if I see that anytime soon.
Well, anytime you assign a reserve fund balance, that keeps it away from, let's say, if the union saw the unreserved, and at least it would be in the reserve category at the board's request, so
I
that's
don't-
entirely up to.
I don't have a problem if Rhonda doesn't have a problem with that.
whatever
Well,
the
again,
board-
during union negotiations, they can't say, well, look, you've got a 1.5. They can say you got a 1.4 if we put 100 in reserve for insurance.
And then it can always
liability
be at the
increase.
board's
It could
prerogative
always
to
be
pull it
pulled,
back out
it
if
could
we
always
don't.
be pulled back out. It's,
Yes, but the difference is when you're negotiating and they see a 1.5, and you know you're gonna have to take out 100,000 for insurance, then it's not 1.5.
I understand.
It's 1.4.
Okay,
And
we
that's
can
what
do that.
Rhonda had said.
I
Thank
can
you.
bring that back at the next budget
if you
hearing.
would do that, it would be very nice. And then
Okay.
we'll be able to have, hopefully, the superintendent here, and he can speak to whatever problems he may find with that. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I
And
would
your
think
next
they do.
handouts, I've got you an analysis of the base student allocation and our FTE over 13 years. When you look at the base student allocation, it did go up 47 cents over last year. I'm going to zip my lips at that. Yep.
Cents, whoa.
Exactly. That's the
Don't
way
do
I
us
feel
any
about that.
favors.
We're receiving $40.95 more per student in
Better than
BSA
dropping
funds than
40
we received this time 11 years ago. That's less than 1% more from 11 years ago, and the inflation factor is way more than that.
Tells you what they think about
Exactly.
education, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well,
I
and
would-
doesn't that kind of go along with the last time we gave raises?
it very much
Kind of
does,
the
yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
same amount of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the few things we've been able to do since then have been, we might give a stipend or a supplement, but
Right,
instead
we've
of,
done that, yeah.
we've done that because.
And we've
it
managed
do-
to hold on to the steps, which cost us
Right.
$750,000 a year.
Exactly,
You
every year.
can't declare failing schools if you give them the financing to address the needs, so
That's true.
That's
they
true.
gotta,
That
they
is
gotta
very
keep
true.
it down, yeah.
I guess we can be thankful, however, that it is on the rise, even if it was only 47 cents. And if you'll look at our FTE, you can see that our FTE is being funded slightly up over last year. 10,792 last year, and we're looking at, projected at 10,809.27 this year. So I've got the reserve if they don't come. Hopefully, the students will come, but if not, I've got that $300,000 reserve for FTE shortfall that I
We
mentioned
build
to
it,
you
they
just a
will
little earlier. And your next handout is the history of fund balance for the Putnam County School District. I wanted to show you our fund balance since 2010-11 and a comparison of how it compares to the Florida School District average up until the last year that it's been posted by the AG site. They always seem to be a couple of years behind on doing a district average. We had been in decline for several years, as had the state average. One of the major causes in my mind was that we were spending more than recurring revenues. All the districts were, because we were being funded at around the 2007, 2008 levels, but our expenditures had the effects of inflation added in. And we also have mandates that are not fully funded, or programs that are no longer self-sufficient in funding themselves. But through working together and cutting our budgets, we have reversed that trend, and you'll see that we've, in 2016, 17, and 17, 18, we have been on the increase.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful thing.
It is wonderful.
Yes, ma'am. Your next handout is just something I do for informational purposes. How much is our budget? It takes our total proposed budget, which, as you see, including NEFAC, is $178 million. It subtracts out items that are in more than one place, because in the, like, for example, take the maintenance department. It's in general fund revenues because it's a transfer in from capital, but it's over here in capital fund, also as an expenditure out. They'll get the money, so it's in revenue and capital as the money coming in from property millage and expenditure out to the general fund. And then we turn around and pay the bills for all the insurance. So that's a double counting. I also subtract out all the NEFAC grants, as you can see, because that is not our money, so,
Is that the
Take
various
NEFAC out.
projects?
yes, that's the NEFAC various projects and the NEFAC risk management. Some of them are internal services funds, and some are enterprises, why I have them separated out. So that brings you to a total budget less the double counting of $141,961,000. And then just for, I guess, kicks and giggles, I take out the beginning fund balance, because that's really money that was left over from the prior year, and I want to get you down to total recurring revenue, brand-new money for the district, and that's $102,677,759.47, spread across all 7 of our different fund types. So that does include just what we expect in new revenue this year.
Okay, Rhonda. So the general fund is approximately 96 million. And that's we can do with pretty much whatever we want.
Yes.
Including pay all those salaries.
Yes.
Okay, then the total of all budgets less double counting is 141.
Yes, ma'am.
But then you're down to 102 down here.
Yes, because I took out the
So
beginning.
does that mean we only get about 6 million categorical?
Well, the categorical for the general fund are the state categoricals like mental health and textbooks.
That's in the general fund.
Yes, all
Oh,
of those
then
are
I'm
within the,
confused about the general fund.
all of those
Okay.
are within the general fund. And Kathy, where if you'll look over that 3-page general fund handout I gave you, I've got a section that mentions the categoricals. It's on page 2. And our categoricals are actually $3.7 million within the general fund. That's
Okay,
that's without the amounts that are salary and benefits, because they're up in the top figure. But that's the teacher lead, instructional materials, the lowest 300, the digital classroom, industry certification, mental health, advanced placement, safe schools. It's the one, with the staple. So page 2
Right.
shows the second category there is the categoricals within the general
gotcha,
fund.
thank you very
welcome.
much.
And really, that was quite a few handouts, and I've taken up a lot of your time. And
That's
That's your job.
need to hear it.
before we go to roll call vote, I want to see if there's any questions for me on any of the information I provided for you today, other than the one suggestion that was made as a possible amendment that I'll bring back at the second public hearing on the final budget. If there's anything else that you want me to look at or anything else you want changed, for now, I'll entertain questions, and then after that, we'll go to a roll call vote.
I think you've done an excellent job.
Yeah, I appreciate it very
Working with the
much.
schools and departments
As
to
always,
Thank you,
build
I
the fund
appreciate
balance.
it.
we're very, very fortunate that Rhonda is a
She can't
conservative
retire.
person.
She's
that-
going to retire one day.
Yeah. You just-
April 30th of 2024.
Well, I'll be,
Sounds like
Yeah,
a
we've got
long
plenty of time still,
away.
right? But I know the date, so I guess now what we need is a roll call vote on each fund's millage rate and
Okay,
each fund's
Madam
budget.
Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the tentative required local effort millage rate of 3.907 mils.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
District 1,
Oh, sorry.
District 2,
Aye.
District 3, District 4,
Aye.
District 5.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the tentative discretionary millage rate of .748 mils.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in,
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
yes.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the tentative capital outlay millage rate of 1.5 mil.
I second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adopt a tentative total millage rate of 6.155 mils, which is 2.3% above the rolled back rate. And I'd like to also note in this motion that there was a typographical error, and we've changed the word below to the word above.
I second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a tentative general fund budget of $96,288,067.77.
I second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Make a motion that we adopt the tentative debt service funds budget of $499,549.06.
I second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
I make a motion that we adopt the tentative capital projects fund budget of $11,455,187.28.
I'd like to second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Make a motion that we adopt the tentative special revenue funds budget of $19,547,166.79.
I second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
I make a motion that we adopt the tentative internal service funds budget of $29,291,636.14.
Second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
I make a motion that we adopt the tentative trust and agency funds budget of $132,759.19.
Second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
I make a motion that we adopt the tentative enterprise funds budget of $21,622,380.08.
District,
I
sorry,
second that motion.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
I make a motion that we adopt the total district tentative budget in its entirety of $178,836,746.31.
I second that.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
And does the next item require a motion, Sharon? Do we usually?
Need a motion.
I make a motion that we advise the property appraiser that Tuesday, September 11th, 2018, at 5:05 PM in the school board meeting room, 200 Reed Street, Palaca, Florida, a public hearing will be held to consider the final millage rate and the final budget.
Is there a second to
I
this motion?
second that motion.
District 1, District 2,
Yay.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes. We done?
Believe
Meeting
we're
is
done.
adjourned.
Thank you all so much.